it's like anything else. Once you get hooked on the Birkie, it becomes the center point of your whole life. And it's your whole year pivots around the Birkie. I mean, that's why you do ride bikes in the summer. That's why I took up biking, to just stay in shape. And that's why your whole winter revolves around this third weekend of February. It's your life. And it just creeps up on you, but it sticks and it's stuck.
Welcome to the Birch Legacies podcast. We are sharing stories celebrating the motivation, the perseverance, and the lifestyle choices necessary to reach the status of Birchlegger. That is, skiers who have completed 20 or more Birkies, Korteloppets, or a combination of both. We would love to hear from Birchleggers young and old who have a story to tell about what keeps them coming back year after year. Information about appearing on this podcast is in the podcast notes. Hi folks, welcome back to Birch Legacies, and today's episode I'm going to be talking with Jim Coors, and I just happened to find out by looking at the Birchleggings website that he's done a lot of work with data and data related to the Birkebeiner specifically, and connecting it to different things. And I'm going to link his data set in our podcast notes, but you'll be able to find it yourself on the website for the Birchleggers. But before I go on any longer, Jim, just go ahead and say hi and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, yeah, thanks. And I appreciate being invited to partake in this little discussion. Well, I'm 76, and I've done a number of Birkies. I've done 36 Birkies. So, I didn't start right at the beginning like a lot of other people, Birchleggings and other people who've been interviewed on this. I got into the game a little late. My first Birkie was in 1983.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's quite a while ago.
Well, it is, but you talk to people who, I just listened to Kurt Schrader's comments on your podcast, but he's got 44 or something, and he started really early.
Yeah.
I didn't really get into cross country skiing until probably 1975.
Okay.
I mean, I was aware of what was going on, but at that point, my wife, who her family's had property up on La Coudray since 1914. And so she's really well connected to Wisconsin. Her parents are obviously very, very proud of their history here. Her great-grandfather, purchased the property. But anyway, they found out about the Birkie. And they said, well, you ought to come out and just take a look at telemark, which was just coming into its heyday. And it was, we arrived here around Christmas of 75, and that's exactly when the U.S. Nordic ski team was holding its trials for the 76 Olympics. So we got to see Bill Koch, and we got to see Marty Hall, and,
Were they on those World Cup trails outside of Telemark?
Yes, they were on the World Cup trails. And so it became pretty inspiring. So and eventually I ended up applying for a job at UW-Madison in the field, the Department of Agronomy, but I'm a plant geneticist, plant breeder. And so I got the job, and in 83, then I moved to Madison. I think did my first Birkie before we actually moved here.
And so, so you did your first one back then. And before we get to the statistics, I think folks are going to want to just know a little bit more to kind of how that all went the first time. Everyone has a pretty good story about the first one, because we're usually young and not quite as smart as we are today.
I think I'm going to echo the sentiments of an awful lot of skiers. I swore I would never do another Birkie after the 83 Birkie.
Yeah.
It was a grind. It was far harder than I thought. The conditions, back then were never all that good relative to what we have now, and the equipment was worse. But for some reason, I came back in 1984, and I should add that my wife and I have always skied together, not on the course together, but we always skied the same races. But anyway, so we skied in 1984 and swore at that point that we would never do it again. And we actually held off for a year or two, mainly because skating was coming in.
Right.
And skating was really uncomfortable for those of us who'd come up with just, the striding classic technique. I mean, the equipment was awful. The shoes the boots were low cut.
Yeah.
And it was really hard to do.
It was.
But then actually, we both began to skate and found that was pretty neat.
Mm-hmm. So did you end up doing it did you do a lot of consecutive ones at that time, or did you have some breaks in your run?
Oh, I probably missed a few here and there. It just, it's like anything else. Once you get hooked on the Birkie,
Yeah.
it becomes the center point of your whole life, and it's your whole year pivots around the Birkie. I
Yeah.
mean, that's why you do ride bikes in the summer. That's why I took up biking to just stay in shape, and that's why your whole winter, evolves around this third weekend of February,
Yeah.
and it's your life, and it just creeps up on you, but it sticks,
Yeah.
and it's stuck.
Yeah. And then are you skating still, or you go back to classic?
I've tried to alternate every year because I like both techniques a lot.
Yeah.
And skating was so much fun when it came in and you mastered it, and it was like skating, ice skating through the woods, and it was
Yeah.
just that's. But I did really begin to appreciate classic skiing because I started thinking a little bit more about the technique and just enjoying. I just enjoy, getting on Evo skis and going through the Schwalm. I just
Yeah.
like that sense of striding.
Your description of skating through the woods, like your ice skating through the woods, those perfect days for skating are hard to beat, but then so are the great days for classic when the kick's working and
Yeah.
it's
Well,
not
I need to tell one more story that
Yeah,
starts the
please.
whole thing going, and this goes way back. My wife and I met at university in California, and we met in January of '73. I mean, we knew each other because we were in the same freshman dorm. But after about 4 years, I was walking across the quad. I think it was January of '73, and met her and talked to her. She said, we're going to go up to Yosemite and go cross country skiing. She just got a pair of Bona 2400 skis.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I
And
remember
I
those.
and yeah, and so I said, well, that's a coincidence because I just got a pair of Bona 2400s. And so we went up to Yosemite in January, and it was just, spectacularly beautiful. Nobody was in Yosemite in the winter in those days. And we've been together ever since. So
Hmm.
those skis are down in the basement, and we pull them out every now and then. But so that's the centerpiece. That sort of it starts the whole thing
That's
of,
great.
of, of cross country skiing.
Has your wife continued to ski the Birkie as well?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
I should
The
have
only
her
one
on.
that she's up to 35.
Okay.
I do want to give a shout out to Ned Zulsdorf
Yeah.
because when I moved to Madison, when Ann and I moved to Madison, the Madison Nordic Ski Club became our kind of social circle. And Ned both Ned and I were on the board, and Ned became a very good friend of mine. And obviously, his decision to step down from DATCAP and become an executive director of the Birkie was
Yeah.
an amazing decision on his part.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of adventures with him because of that. We've done the border to border ski across Finland
Oh, that's a cool
together.
one. Yeah, I've heard of
That
that.
is a really cool one. It's not happening anymore because I think they can't manage the lack of snow.
Okay.
And then I also was able to go to Russia with Ned to look at because the World Loppet organization was trying to establish a Loppet in Russia, but
Yeah.
this was back in trying to look at the date on that. But anyway, so Ann and I both, and Kathy was with him, and we've had some real adventures together. And Ned's done so much for the Birkie, especially
Oh,
the classic trail.
for sure. That is the life. That was a inflection point in the whole history of the Birkie, I think, is adding that classic trail.
Oh, you look at the numbers of skiers, excuse me, and you go to the website that I have. That 2008 opening of the Classic Trail just occasioned a complete reversal in terms
Yeah.
of sort of the narrowing or the lessening number of skate classic skiers versus skate.
Yeah.
And now, in 1999, there were only 4% the skiers were classic.
Yeah.
In 2025, it was 30%. And a lot of that's due to women. That's neat. That's really cool.
And I think it keeps some of the older skiers as well, staying in there because they're just more comfortable as you get to a certain age, maybe doing more classic than skate.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Especially at the start, that makes a big difference.
Yeah. And I had forgotten that 2008 was the year, and that was the time because when I interviewed Kelly Skillicorn, who won the classic that year for the women, that she talked about the fact that the establishment of that trail in 2008 completely changed the way she looked at the Birkie from then on.
Oh, yeah. And it's really obvious. A lot of people felt that way.
Well, let's dig into the data a little bit. Again, for listeners, if you want to look at this while you're listening or you just want to dig into it on your own later, it's linked in these show notes. So if you're looking at that, you'll also be able to find them on the Birchleggers website, which is also linked in my show notes, but you can find it, just Google it. And I think you just mentioned to me off air that maybe there's going to be an article in the Silent Sports about some
I
of the
think
things.
so. Last time I talked to the editor, yeah, or the publisher, that was the case. But
well, why don't you just tell us a little bit about the data you have, how you began looking at
okay.
that?
Well, it started back in 2014 for me. I retired, but I always liked dealing with large data sets as part of my profession. So this was just an open target. So I decided to just see. I was at the pivotal age where I was slowing down, so I wanted to just see how I compared to everybody else. Well, there's since 1999 when you could actually distinguish between classic and skate skiers in the finish times. Since 1999 up to last year, there have been over 108,000 finishers. So this is full-length Birkies. I eliminated the short ones. 2024 didn't count because it was circular. This is the full-length point-to-point. So I just looked at those races because I was really interested in speed and how people changed over the years. So that's the data set. And there's about 27,000 skiers in that data set. It's not a small data set.
Yeah.
So I got it all together, and I did it independent of the Birkie itself. I just got PDFs. They were all available electronically, PDFs and some special scanning routines to just scan all the data into one huge Excel data set.
Yeah.
And then that's what this data set represents. Then I decided to say, okay, as skier ages, and this is what we call a cross-sectional analysis initially, how does a 20-year-old skier compare to a 40-year-old skier and time-wise? Have they gotten slower, faster? How fast? And what's the rate? And that's what this data set shows. And it's broken down by classic versus freestyle. It's also broken down by regular skiers versus elite. And then finally just the Birkies, Birchleggers.
You must be good with pivot tables. Is this a pivot table operation?
It's pivot tables, and then there's a lot of AI going on here too.
Oh, is there? Okay, I wondered about that.
Yeah, well, a lot of modern statistical routines require some programming, and that's where AI comes in. You say, I want to analyze this using this sort of statistics, and AI will say, here's the program, plug it in. So that's how that works.
Yeah. It was such a timely thing because when I told you that I was at dinner on Saturday night just a few nights ago, and a friend just pulled off his refrigerator a hockey stick thing showing at age 70 you get really slow. And I actually had been thinking to myself, because I was a science teacher and used to teach some of this graphing technique to my students to analyze research data in a smaller scale than what you did in your work. But some of the basics of it, I thought, I'm going to try. I wonder if I could pull the data myself. And then, the other morning I woke up and I go, wait, Jim's already done this. I don't need to do it. So I think, and I'm sure, based on my limited experience with Birchleggers, there's a lot of them that are in a field where they would be kind of data geeks. So,
that's the whole. Yeah, there's a lot of data geeks in this.
Yeah,
so
this will be interesting for people to pull up. I'm looking at a screen right now that is came right off of the Birchleggers thing, and you've got the Birkie stats. I'm looking at the trends page, but you can be looking. Folks can be looking at anything. What were some of the interesting things that you kind of learned when you kind of broke this out?
Okay, well, one of the underlying things I've always been interested in is how cross-country skiers compare to other athletes.
Okay.
in terms of longevity, basically. And that's one of the things that really this hits, because there's a recent Swedish study that just came out. Longitudinal study went on for 47 years, I think 400 people, average people.
Yeah.
And the physiology, basically your athletic physiology peaks at age 35.
Yep.
Whether it's muscle or oxygen utilization or whatever. And then it gradually decreases. And so what's interesting about cross-country skiers is even though that is the case, they can still maintain speed. All the way until their mid 50s. That's what's remarkable about. You look at, how many seconds per year do you add to your Birkie time at this, between say 20 and 50.
Yeah.
For the classic top 5 skiers, it's like 30 seconds a year. That's all you're adding to your time.
Wow.
That's until your mid 50s.
Yeah.
It's spectacular.
It is
and
really something.
and that's a thing of cross country skiing because it's a whole body exercise, muscle plus aerobics, and technique thrown in, and then just cussedness because you're out there in the cold. And so it really highlights what cross-country skiers, how they differ from everybody else.
So many of the people that I've interviewed already for this, and the ones that I'm sure to come, will have said and will say that this is, you mentioned it, it's the center point around which the year turns. And so you do things in July because you know that in February you need to stand at that line and get to the other end.
Yeah. It's a whole year endeavor.
Yeah, I'm looking right now. I'm looking at the data set called "How Fast Do We Slow Down?" and it features
that's where all those graphs are.
Yeah, the features the Birchlegger ones I'm looking at, and it's kind of impressive.
The Birchleggers are really impressive.
Yeah, I'm impressed by the
speed. They speed up.
Yeah. I mean, it's like between, I'm looking at this line, it's a shallow dip, but between 35 and 60, there's a dip around 45 to 50 where you're actually a little faster.
Yeah, no, it's spectacular. And then when you get to 50 or late 50s, you slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, you always hit something I call the wheels coming off the cart phase, and that's in your late 60s.
Yeah, yeah,
and a little earlier for women than men.
Yeah, but it's still, and I'm looking at your classic one. I'm going, okay, I'm a classic skier these days. Okay, yeah. I got some time, I got some time.
Besides, these are averages. Individuals are very considerable.
Oh, for sure. So, well, I think it's fascinating that you have the longitudinal approach as one of the ways. I mean, is that that idea that this is tracking the same skier? Is that what that means?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's tracking the same skiers. People who skied 20 races, and then you try to average their aging pattern across the Birchleggers. So,
and of course, it's helpful to have a large set of data because obviously the snow changes your outcomes.
Right.
Some days. Right. I mean, I do math while I ski, and I usually know somewhere around 5 to 8K when I'm going to finish because I'm in my head doing my minutes per K and I'm multiplying by 53. And then I'm dividing by 60 to figure out my hours and minutes.
Oh, okay.
So I mean that's how I keep myself busy while I'm skiing. But I mean it's like
you should be thinking about technique. I just want to point that out.
For many of us, it's so automatic at this point.
Okay.
No, anyway, it's this is really fascinating. So what else are you taking away from this this information? What do you think, or what should we take away from it?
Well, number one, take heart that your cross-country skiing is a wonderful activity on all fronts. It's a great place to be in the woods, and it's good for you. So, and you can do it at all ages. That's another thing. You can ski until you're dead. And that's an interesting question here that I haven't been able to address, and that is there's some really the oldest skiers are, for men around 85, 86, depending on the technique. And for women, it's around 79 or 80.
Mm.
Is that going to increase? And is there a possibility? I haven't looked at the past to see whether that has increased the age of
Okay.
the oldest skier. And I think that's an interesting thing.
Yeah, that would be interesting to find out. So you had mentioned in your, I saw in your the article about this in the Birchleggers that you're anxious to have someone who wants to go even further with this data. Is that right? You take the data and go do more. And like, what kind of things would you like to have them do?
Well, it would be nice to try to get this into a publication in an academic journal of some sort.
Oh, sure.
And it's kind of difficult for an agronomist to approach a sports physiology journal and say, I've got this analysis. I don't know.
Yeah.
Academia has got silos, and it's kind of hard to do that. This is a nice data set, compares to many of the data sets that are available in Europe, looking at other loppets and, comparing the Birkie to other loppets. More importantly, I think, is comparing cross-country skiing to marathon running
Mm.
or endurance bicycling or something like that, because I think there are particular features that need to be highlighted, and that I'd like to see that done.
Yeah, it'd be interesting, I'm sure, to know. I mean, my inclination is to think that it's just the age. You're not going to get as many runners at those later ages.
True.
Uh,
Yeah. No, that's really true.
I really feel like this is easier on the body.
Yeah, it is.
I
I
always
used to
tell
be a
people
runner.
because you've done a large number of Birkies, so have I, and I always tell people, well, yeah, but it's a lot easier than marathon. I've never run a marathon in
Oh,
myself.
I haven't either. My wife
Yeah,
has. But your hips and knees just can't handle it.
yeah, yeah,
But you can ski.
yeah. Well, this is cool. So, anything else about the data that you want to share with folks? I think people are going to just want to dig in and look around themselves. Anything you want to point out that they should go look at?
No, as I mentioned earlier, it's really heartened by the increased interest and success of the classic skiers. Obviously, a broader demographic involvement, and the other thing I want to point out is, the Birkie needs obviously always needs support, but I was the founder and worked with Ben to get the endowment going.
Oh, okay.
And so this whole round of revisions to the Birkie Stats website, you'll go down to the footer and you'll see that please support the endowment along with the Birch Leggings Club, both of them. We're talking long-term projects. We're
Yeah,
talking long-term sustainability. We're talking long-term data, man. It's all the same thing, and
yeah,
they mesh.
yeah. Well, one of the questions I had for you is, what advice do you have for people? And I'm just going to pick out of what you just said one piece, which is just get involved and take your skill set and try to give to the endeavor here, whether it be money, but if you have a set of skills that you can do like what you're doing, I think people are going to be fascinated by this. As we're talking, you probably see my eyes moving to my right, which is this is where I have the data setting up, and I'm looking at all the classic all skiers and
And
classic
since I
top
do
five.
have this data set, if anybody has questions they want me to try to answer, I'll do it. There's
Yeah,
millions of questions, and I
yeah,
just this is what I've put up so far.
yeah.
So
This is
yeah,
great.
contact me.
Yeah, and I'll put you have a little bio about yourself in there, who did this and why, and
Yeah,
you even have a little poem. Isn't that a poem I thought I read
that's
earlier?
a
Yeah,
that's a poem that goes back to why I originally started skiing. Is just to
yeah.
get out of the woods in a single track through a bunch of trees.
And by the way, that picture that you have there, folks that know the trail will recognize that this isn't the trail, I don't think, but it looks a lot like the North End Classic Trail.
Oh,
And,
it isn't. It's up in one up in Gunflint. It's
yeah,
there.
yeah.
I can't remember the name of it.
But yeah, for Birkie skiers and people in that area, I have to highly recommend it's about 12K long, the North End Classic
It
Trail.
is probably the best classic
Yeah,
trail within
yeah.
a big distance.
Yeah, and it's reminiscent of the old days where it's just, one track and you're
Yeah,
going through the woods and it's beautifully designed. I think there's one place where you might have to snowplow,
yeah,
just to get around a corner. Otherwise, every time you're worried that it's going to sharply turn, it just gently turns,
yeah.
and you can stay in the tracks. And and enjoy it. And just it's just beautiful, and it goes up and down. It's not particularly difficult, and it's a great place to go spend however long it takes you to ski 12K, because it's a beautiful time in the woods, and it fits this poetry that you have here really well. So, gosh, I really want to thank you, Jim. I'm glad I was able to connect with you so quickly. We are coming up on the 26th Birkie, but these podcasts are evergreen, meaning that you should be able to listen to them anytime and enjoy them, and even maybe in the off season, because it's thinking about being out in the woods and thinking about how next year's going to look and what your personal longitudinal study is going to look like. We all think about that. So.
Okay, good. John, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. So thank you.
I just love it. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks for listening. Please check out the podcast notes to see links to the Birch Leggings Club and the Birkie website. If you've skied a combination of 20 Birkies and or Korties, I encourage you to join the Birch Leggings Club. If you'd like to tell your Birkie story, please contact me, John Peterson, at my email listed in the podcast notes or by filling out the guest application form linked there. Please subscribe to our program wherever you get your podcasts and leave a review. You can also text us directly from your phone or computer using the quick link in the notes to let us know how we are doing.